Painter's Painting is a film about people who were friends of mine, and political people never liked the film because it was a celebration of New York painting. It starred Bill de Kooning and Andy Warhol and Jasper Johns and Frank Stella and Robert Rauschenberg and a great many painters and people in the art world of New York. And this had never been done before. You know, just think of what it would have been like to have lived in Paris and have a camera crew and film Braque and Matisse and Picasso. And that's exactly the way New York was, say, from 1949, 1950, to the time I filmed them in 1970, and on past 1970, but I mean, I was there, and I knew those people well. I knew Rauschenberg and Johns before they ever sold a painting. A woman I used to live with gave Warhol his first job. I knew these people extremely well. I met Frank Stella when he was still a student at Princeton. And I knew de Kooning from long before, and Barnett Newman. And most of my political friends hate that art, and they hate the fact that these people have all made millions and millions of dollars. I mean, millions. Those people make more than bank presidents do, and they're not even crooks. So that I think that nobody makes as much money in America today, including movie stars, than Jasper Johns. He probably makes, I know that he sells about 10 paintings a year for $800,000 each. And then he sells some of his older paintings for a lot of money.
The idea that had come to me that that I should have to mean what I did, then accompanying that was that there was no reason to mean what other people did. And so if I could tell that I was doing what someone else was doing, then I would try not to do it. Because it seemed to me that de Kooning did his work perfectly beautifully, and there was no reason for me to help him with it.
I did not want a small gesture standing at the easel with a sable brush. And having looked at Cubism, which can be very detailed and minute and fine, and has that essence at times of the easel and the sable brush, I literally wanted to break free, put it on the floor, throw the paint around. A picture that is beautiful or comes off or works looks as if it all was made in one stroke at once.
Is it harder to be a woman and be a painter?
Well, I think the first issue is being a painter.
The abstract expressionists and myself had what they had in common, we had in common was touch. I was never interested in their pessimism or editorializing. You have to have time to feel sorry for yourself if you're going to be a good abstract expressionist. And I think I always considered that a waste.
Andy, when I first knew you, you weren't painting, and then you did become a painter, and I wonder if you could tell me why that happened and when it happened and something about it.
Well, you made me the painter.
No, let's have the true things now.
Well, that was the truth, wasn't it? You used to gossip about the art people, and that's how I found out about art.
No, then you thought it was chic,
What?
so you started art.
No, Dee was making art commercial, and since I was in commercial art, I thought, well, real art should be commercial, because Dee said so, and that's how it all happened. Isn't that true?
No.
Yes, it is.
Not entirely. The one thing that got through to me was the notion of if there's anything that you want to do that's meaningful, in my case, it was painting, do it.
How do you relate painters' painting to your other work? How do you see it in relation to your political films?
Well, what I always said I was doing with my films, once I got a few of them made, was to try to put on film the history of my time that interested me. And the painting of my time interests me, and it's not political. The very world around painting is essentially a reactionary world. It's a world of many millionaires getting their kicks by buying paintings. It's a series of sharp dealers, of hokey museums, but it's also done by people who came from all sorts of classes. Most of the painters I knew came from the poor, and they're now super millionaires. And I don't care about the money, I mean, even though I own some of their works, I don't care about the money. I like the work. And as I told you before, I'm a patriot. American art was really strong and new and vital and interesting. And painting has always been for the rich. In the Middle Ages, it was the church that was rich. You don't think that peasants commissioned art in the 12th century. It was cardinals and popes, kings and lords. Painting, anything that's tactile. You see, the beauty about film is that its very nature should be democratic, that anybody can go into a theater and look at it. The beauty of the written word is almost the same thing. Even though books cost $20 today, it's not really that serious. But if you want to buy a Major Jasper Johns work that's old, you're going to have to lay out $10 million. And that immediately takes most people out of the market.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. Maybe the people who buy those paintings are bad, but the people who make them are not.
It is priced at $40,000, but actually I'll be satisfied if I get $35,000. I have a $15,000 profit on that, after all. No, I'm not very busy. I have De Antonio here, and they're making a film. He's making a film, like the McCarthy film, but without McCarthy, about the art world.
The collectors have made an enormous contribution, not only to the market, but to painters themselves. It seems to me that the fact of the skulls, the fact of Dr. Ludwig, these people that buy, that set standards, make everyone else itch to emulate. The itch to emulate, the desire for status, is certainly one of the main things in our society.
Frankly, I think that, this accusation that's leveled against the dealers, that they are responsible for shaping the art market is a very silly one. Naturally, we are there to do that job, and we are doing it. Now, if people, ourselves, and the critics, and the museums go along with us, then there is a consensus there, and therefore we are right and not wrong. So I think that what we are doing is merely doing our job.
I had learned from many people who seem to be taken with the fact that my purchasing art has changed the lives of quite a few of these artists. And of course I'm aware of just a few of them. One is John Chamberlain, who was a hairdresser when I met him. Big fellow, long mustache, and I couldn't imagine him being a hairdresser. And working on sculpture was such a horrible situation for him to suddenly make a shift from being a hairdresser to working in this powerful iron and tin. And so he said to me if he only had 10 or 15 weeks of a steady income of, I think it was $100 a week, why, he said, I would be able to tell my boss to go to the devil and really do this work. And I was so impressed by his work that I said, go ahead. And of course, right after that summer, he never was a hairdresser again.
Sorry.
He became a full-time sculptor. With Larry Poons, I found out he was a short order cook. And I said, well, how much do you make a week? He said, $25. I said, what are you talking about? Nobody makes $25 a week anymore. He said, well, what I mean is I only work 2 hours a day, and that gives me enough I said, well, I'll give you 8 weeks worth of salary. I'll buy a painting from you. And he looked at me very suspiciously, and he said, Well, I'm willing to quit my job, he said, but I want the 8 weeks in advance, because if you change your mind, he says, I'm out of a job.
Robert Scull never walked up to me and has said, here, Larry, I want to help you. He did it through Dick, and it was a dealer, and it was business, you know? I mean, if he wants to think of himself in that way, I've got nothing against it, you know?
It had been my intention to be an artist since I was a child. And in the place where I was a child, there were no artists, so I didn't, and there was no art, so I really didn't know what that meant. And I think it meant that I would be able to be in a situation other than the one that I was in. I think that was the primary fantasy. Whereas the society there seemed to accommodate every other thing I knew about, but not that possibility. So I think that in part the idea of being an artist was that kind of fantasy of being out of this. Then, because there's none of this here, so if you're going to be it, you'll have to be somewhere else. So I like that, and plus I like to do things in my hands and all.
There has never been a tradition of political art in the United States that people have made a lot of money on. Like when you go down to Mexico, wow, you see these incredible political murals, and you realize what's missing in the United States. Is art that carefully controlled to keep out the political art in the United States?
Well, let's put it this way. We've never had an artist of quality who tried to do political art. I mean, Ben Shahn was not art of quality. And Jack Levine is not an art of quality. The Germans have produced political art, modern German art. There's a guy called Hans Haacke who is quite amazing. He's attacked Margaret Thatcher, he's attacked Reagan, and he's done it brilliantly.
I've seen Swedish political art too.
And I've spent a lot of time in Sweden and seen Swedish political art, but it's not as good as German. There is one man now who's doing serious political art who's a success, but it's a minority because, frankly, what can be owned? You can't own a film basically except a cassette, and you can't own a book in the sense that you own the rights of it. But when you own a painting, you own the entire thing. Nobody can reproduce it without your permission. It's yours, and there's a kind of ownership. And it transcends the concept of bourgeois society because it goes back, as I say, to lordly societies and religious societies. The greatest collections of old art in the world were by the popes. You can still go to Rome and see not just Michelangelo's chapel, but see one painting after another.
The ruling class have always controlled art as a sign of their temporal power.
Absolutely.
And it continues to this day. It's the big corporations that buy most of the modern art for their corporate buildings or
donate them to the Museum of Modern Art and the major museums around the country and get healthy tax deductions and all. Painting has to do with money. There's no doubt about that.
There's no question that my work and the work of the men I respect took a revolutionary position, you might say, against the bourgeois notion of what a painting is as an object, aside from what it is as a statement. Because in the end, you couldn't even contain it in the ordinary bourgeois home. There's more to the problem, it seems to me, than any old-fashioned idea of what an easel painting is. A painting can be bigger than anything that can go on an easel and still be, in my opinion, an easel painting. And in the end, size doesn't count. Whether the easel painting is small or big is not the issue. Size doesn't count. It's scale that counts. It's human scale that counts. And the only way you can achieve human scale is by the content.
Why do we seem to get involved in bigger and bigger paintings with the American artists today?
Oh, I think there are lots of reasons for that. I mean, the scale of America is different. We'd say most American painters work in what were once small factories. Most European artists work in either apartments or studios that were designed in terms of easel painting. But there's no doubt, too, that there's a different experience in a large picture. But I think it has more to do with a heroic impulse as compared with the intimacy of French painting.
I feel that I'm an American painter in the sense that this is where I grew up and lived, was born, and this is where I've developed my ideas and so on. At the same time, I hope that my work transcends the issue of being an American. I recognize that I'm an American because I'm not a Czechoslovak. And my work was not painted in Czechoslovakia or in Hungary or in India. But I hope that my work can be seen and understood on a universal basis. That is, that the language is of a nature that it doesn't have the necessity for its American label.